First of all, can we have your visualization for Siemens marketing? And second, can we have you for Siemens marketing? And I said yes twice. You need to speak what you think at some points, but that's something you can learn. If people don't believe you, if they don't believe that you know what you are talking about, you lose your credibility and your story is basically worth nothing. My hope and dream would be that high quality visualization gets more and more democratized. All CFD simulations are beautiful if you just invest like 2 minutes into them.
Stephan, it's been a while. I've actually checked LinkedIn, and we've been connected since the 15th of March 2022 on LinkedIn. So it's been a while, over 3 years, and finally you've made it to the show. Welcome.
Yeah, it's an honor for me because basically you are the reason that I engaged on LinkedIn and started my little career as an influencer or
Really
influencer
cool.
in my microsphere. Thank you for that. You have been quite inspiring, and it's an honor to me that I'm a guest in your podcast today.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. And today it's really about that topic, right? About post-processing, about scientific visualizations. And you are one of the experts, so you can I can learn a lot from you, and you can probably tell us more about scientific visualization that I could do. But before we begin, Stephan, who are you in the first place, and what are you doing at Siemens?
Okay, so my name is Stephan Groß. I'm a mechanical engineer by education. I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and at Siemens, I'm a technical marketing engineer for CFD. So basically what I do is I look at CFD simulations and optimize their visualizations for multiple purposes. My job is to show people outside what CFD software is about, what CFD simulations can look like, and what new features are coming in our software, and I show them to a broad audience.
This is super interesting. Colors for Directors, commonly known
Exactly.
as CFD, and you're basically one of the orchestrators. So why is it so important to talk about scientific visualization? I think there's even books about like what colors to pick and so on and so forth. But
Yes.
why is it so important to begin with?
So in computational fluid dynamics, we have results at the end of the simulation, but that's most likely just a black number on a white screen or on a white paper. Like this and that is the air resistance of our car, of our plane. This and that is the pressure drop in our pipe. That's just a number. But this number, yeah, it's partly interesting to engineering. Of course, that's your result. That's what you tell your manager, your customer, and whatsoever. But your job as an engineer is to optimize the thing. So it's not really about what is it? So how much is the pressure drop? How much is the air resistance? It's more like why? Why do we have that pressure drop? Why do we have air resistance? What is happening here that air resistance is happening somewhere? It's magically spawning out of nowhere? No. And for that, we need visualization because we need to get into the simulation and find out which geometry is imposing that resistance. Where is the energy loss that suddenly occurred? And for that, we need to look at different quantities in the simulation results and interpret them and then find out, aha, we have an edge here that is meant to do something positive, but it's doing something negative to the flow behavior. The spending of the pipe. It's so hard that the flow cannot follow. Yeah, we need to visualize it to see, to interpret that. And then we can say, okay, next step is I'm doing the piping in a different direction. that's why visualization is so important in CFD.
So ultimately, Stefan, what you're doing, you're basically a storyteller, but for scientific / engineering purposes, right? So you're basically telling a story A versus B. What do you see in A compared to B, etc.? What do we optimize? And I think the actual story or anecdote how you actually became that, or got that job, not became the job. You somehow become that job as well, right?
Yes, I do.
Got that job at Siemens. Is you actually had a visualization posted on LinkedIn, I believe,
Yes.
and then Simon, your boss, so to speak, saw that visualization and was like, "Hey, you are talented. Let's have a talk." Right?
So basically, the exact story is I was doing external aerodynamics for race car prototypes. I was still an academic employee at that time, and I was very, very proud of my work. So I put a lot of effort into visualization and put that simulation visualization on LinkedIn. And then my now boss, Simon Fischer, contacted me and said, "Hey, I have 2 questions. First of all, can we have your visualization for Siemens marketing? And second, can we have you for Siemens marketing?" And I said, yes, twice.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what actually makes a good technical marketer? Because I think this is a skill or like a position that's really lacking in the industry. First and foremost, engineers, like it's probably like kind of a prejudice. Engineers are not very good communicators in the sense they want to sit in their small chamber, code, fiddle around with their technical stuff. They're not really good marketers by nature or per definition, which I think is a prejudice, right? I think some engineers are really good marketers and really good salespeople, but by nature, by definition, engineers are more like the technical guys. They're not really marketers. So what qualities do you have to have as a technical marketer?
So basically, you need to have a big mouth.
Which means?
To be blunt, you need to speak what you think at some points, but that's something you can learn. Of course, to be a technical marketer, you need the engineering background. You need to understand what you're talking about. Without that, you cannot do the job. And if people don't believe you, if they don't believe that you know what you are talking about, you lose your credibility and your story is basically worth nothing. But what else do you need? Yeah, maybe you need to have some fable for stories, because literally the whole world around us is full of stories. But it's like reading a fairy tale to kids. You say, once upon a time in CFD, we had that new feature, and that's already a story that you that could be already a start of the story that you're telling. So basically, you need to, at some point, need to get fun out of presenting stuff to others. Yeah, that's basically, we are always presenting in our daily work as engineers. We are talking to our peer engineers and we are showing our simulation. In that case, we are already presenting. And we are showing the simulation to our managers. And we are showing maybe the simulations to customers. Yeah, of the product or whatever, maybe of the simulation service. It doesn't matter. But at this point, we are presenting. And if this is fun to you, on the one hand, creating the simulation, and on the other hand, presenting your results and your interpretation to people. If that's you, welcome to technical marketing.
That's super interesting. So what are some of the best practices? Because there's a lot of stuff that people do wrong, right? In post, I see so many CFD pictures or structural mechanics, post-processing visualizations on LinkedIn. What are people actually doing wrong? And what are some of the best practices? Maybe let's start with the wrong side of things. So what are people actually doing wrong?
Yeah, the thing is, you look at a CFD and it's green. Or you look at a simulation visualization and it's completely green. And now it's actually not completely green, but it's like the majority of the picture is just green. And that's literally wrong. Because when you have a quantity, just think about pressure in a pipe. Then you apply some color map to it, and the default is always like 100% red over 100% green to 100% blue. The order does not matter. So you have that rainbow that is just like 100% values that your software can display. And that's the issue. Because first of all, the auto limits are most likely set up to the maximum of the domain and the minimum of the domain. But that's just like peaks in the results. They don't matter for the most information in the picture. So you have that color bar and you spread it out along the whole domain, and the information that you actually want to show, the differences that you want to see, are somewhere in the middle. Yeah, but it's all spread out to the ends, so the relevant information is all in the middle. Too bad, green is in the middle. So the majority is already green. So first tip at that point, adapt your limits, see off the pressure, and say, yeah, that's my relevant upper limit and that's my relevant lower limit. And I want to visualize in between. That's first step. But still, the middle is green, but not the whole picture anymore. The second thing about that green and the 100% red, 100% green, 100% blue color bar is maybe it's perfect from a software perspective. Yeah, like all values are at 100%. Yeah, wonderful. But we humans are not perfect. Yeah, we do not perceive colors uniformly. I'm not even speaking about people that have impaired color vision. We do not see 100% green, 100% red, and 100% blue as visually as important compared to each other. So for, I don't know, nature reasons or something, I'm not a biologist, we see green overrepresented. So it basically just hits us in the face. So we focus, from our perception perspective, on the green. Yeah, so it's not representing the exact data to us, but it makes the green point overly important visually. Yeah, of course, we can go down with the green value and mitigate that somehow. But that's only valid if you have things like a color calibrated monitor and you have the perfect vision and you have no impairment in red-green distinction or color distinction in your eyes. And I know a guy who works in a Formula One team in CFD. He has red-green color difficulties, let's say. So they basically changed the way. There's no green in that Formula One team CFD, actually. And that's literally something that you can do for your own visualization as well. Okay, enough rant about green. What can you also do wrong in CFD? You have not only pressure in your pipe, you have also velocity in your pipe. You have temperature if it's some heated fluid in the pipe. What people normally do is they put all quantities, all scalars in there and visualize it with the same color bar. And then your eye says, what is that? Is green now the velocity? Is red now the pressure? No, come on. You have like all different colors that you can choose from. Don't make multiple quantities in one picture with the same color bar, because you cannot distinguish. And yeah, you could argue, yeah, but think about it. The flow has velocity and the wall has wall shear stress, and some other parts have temperature. You can make it, you can get to it. Yeah, but you can also make it easy to understand. There's no harm in making things visually easy to get. Thinking about multiple scalars or multiple quantities visualized in one picture. Actually, you only need one single color per scalar. So basically, high velocity could be red and low velocity could be white. White is not really a color in that sense. So you have one color used for velocity. You want to have temperature as well in there. Yeah. Maybe you need just one extra color for temperature. And you don't have color overlap then. Yeah. Is that something that's clear?
Definitely, I think it's a good guide, especially for people who might either be beginners to post processing or maybe are intermediate but still advanced. Maybe they can also learn from these guidelines. We talked about colors, Stefan, extensively about the color green, the bad guy, so to speak. What about the visualization angles, the perspectives, the animations? Because I see also a lot of animations. There's probably some things that you can do wrong. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Wow, that's like the most advanced topic, because how you look at things, in which perspective, that's really difficult. Normally in software, in visualization software, you have first like the engineering perspective, which is like parallel view. So you look at things as if they were parallelly projected on a surface or something. That gives the image a very, very flat style. And if you have real life objects, they look like distorted in that picture. So be aware, if you want to do high level post processing, you need to get away from this engineering view, parallel view, into a perspective. And that's literally the first point. But that leads to, which perspective do I choose? I have that car in a wind tunnel, and how do I look at it? From which perspective? That's really, really tough. You need to get a feeling for this and get peers into the discussion, basically. So my first contact point for these things, because he's obviously better in that, is my boss. So I take a perspective and I show it to him. And more often than not, he says, yeah, but wouldn't the car look a little bit more dramatic if you put the camera a little bit more to the ground, so that the car looks more powerful or something in that? You can always you get a very good feeling for that when you work with peers. Yeah, you can also look outside your engineering space and ask your partner or whatsoever. I'm not saying show corporate results to outside the company, but you can get people that are not into engineering on the picture and say, what do you think? Is this perspective better or this? And say A/B testing here. You get a feeling, you develop this, and this is why this is so hard, because you develop it over time. Or maybe you don't.
Yeah. What are some of the things you definitely shouldn't be doing when it comes to post-processing? There's probably some definite don'ts that you shouldn't be doing in post-processing. We talked about, of course, color.
Yeah.
But is there something else?
Yeah, let's get back maybe to limits. Say you have a pipe and there's a flow through it. And the simulation is time dependent. So it changes over time. And you have an upper and a lower limit. What I always see is the limits are constantly changing in that transient simulation. So the maximum and the minimum of the velocity in that picture changes. And as a result, the whole color bar limits change all the time. And then you have to focus literally with one eye on the color bar and with the other eye on the image where something is happening, like the flow field is rushing through there and there is a red bubble indicating high velocity that's traveling along. And with the other eye, you're always checking like, yeah, what does that red color mean? No, like set the limits constant. Yeah, so you have one check at the beginning of the animation. Yes, this is max, this is min. And then you just look at the picture and then you know, yeah, high velocity, red means high velocity, means 10 meters per second or something. And white means 0 meters per second, and that's constant. Yeah, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another thing that you should not do in post-processing. Some people like to have in their color bar just like 18 points between min and max. It doesn't matter if it's actually 18 or 7 or a huge number. And the first one starts at 1.2334782 meters per second. And the uppermost point is 9.38850 meters per second. Oh, come on. Your simulation is not that precise. The sixth digit behind does not really matter. Say 1 meter per second and 9 meter per second. And everything in between is like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And not like fractals, not like some decimals you don't even care about. You cannot interpret this visually. You're just basically making things too complex than they should be necessary.
Yeah, that makes sense. Stefan, one question regarding publications, so scientific publications. Is there other rules that come on top of what you already said, or is it basically the same?
There's a lot of things that I could refer to. I have some books on scientific visualization in the background, but I'm really just scratching the top, and the cool thing is it's always developing. Yeah, people are getting into that. People are looking how to make visualization better, how to make them barrier free, so that, for example, getting back to that, people with impaired color vision can distinguish these things. And that's a lot of things that come into that. And there's a lot of standard works that you could refer to. And I'm taking at least a day per year to get deeply into these topics and see what is new, what haven't I read, and what do I need to bring back into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I'm wondering how Stefan's mind work, in the sense of like ultimately you have zeros and ones, right? If you really break it down, it's zeros and ones. You kind of try to make them pretty by arranging them properly. So how does your mind work in the sense of like you get results, whether that's a car, a new GPU feature that you want to show visually, like optimized, whatever, for a publication or like for your website.
Mm-hmm.
How do you divide and conquer the CFD post-processing inside of your head? Step by step.
Step by step. First, the normal case is either I get a feature that I want to show to the market, or I already get a simulation that uses that feature that I want to show to a broad audience. Let's go the easy way and say somebody from development or product management or somebody has already created a simulation that uses the new feature.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's for me to discuss with people until I fully understand what this new feature is all about. For example, it could be something that the simulation now runs faster on GPUs. That's an easy one because we just show a complicated simulation and say, now it's faster. And the visualization is just like on the way to it. But maybe there is a new particle model. Like I had once upon a time, so bending particles that are interconnected to each other. How do I show them to a broad audience? Yeah, first of all, I need to understand what is this about. The particles are now cylinders connected to each other instead of spheres connected to each other. That makes computation for long fiber objects way, way faster than if I just had spheres connected, because it's fewer elements. So basically, I say, okay, I need to visualize that. I have cylindrical objects that make up the whole fiber in that case. So I need to visualize the independent cylinders, because that's literally the clue here. I need to find out what is the clue. And then I add colors distinctive to the clue. That's basically it. I need to find out what is the clue of the simulation, and then I need to show it. It's just like if you were an aerodynamicist in race car engineering or something, and you already know what the clue of your simulation is. But if you want to give it to a broad audience, you need to show, yeah, this is a very sophisticated simulation. It was really a lot of effort and it has a lot of details. So you show exactly that. It is very, very sophisticated. So basically, you show a quantity that has really, really a lot of scale. Like vorticity, you have very, very small vortices, eddies, and you have bigger ones. And you visualize that. It's a transient simulation, so you have flow basically tumbling around. You show that, hopefully in the most impressive way, how it develops. Yeah, focusing, trying to show detail and the whole picture at once. Then the people on the other side of the screen, they will see, wow, there's a lot of flow structure in here. It's not just like one blob that's hovering around. It's really, really small vertices that are hovering around. It must be a very, very detailed simulation. And if you go one step further into like maybe cinematic post-processing, when you have very, very high fidelity in your turbulence modeling, in your flow simulation, do also put very high fidelity in your geometry. Yeah, for external aerodynamics, if you have an SUV, you don't care what the lights are, what the front bumper is colored or whatsoever in the simulation themselves. But if you want to show it to sea level, and yes, they are very, very interested in that. If you want to show it to politicians, if the whole car was just uniformly gray, no windows, yeah, that wouldn't have an impact. But if you have all the small lights, yeah, like all the small gaps between body panels, if you even add the threads and profile to the tires, that gives a geometric fidelity that hints how much fidelity you actually have in your simulation. It's like talking the same language on two different levels.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Stefan. How much do you actually use? Because I know it from back in my PowerView days that there's automation, so you can actually script some animations, right? How much do you templatize your post-processing? That would be interesting to know.
Okay, templatize. I do have a big set of my own color bars. For example, I work for Siemens, and obviously, like in PowerPoint and Word and whatsoever, we have a color scheme. And so I took that color scheme and I created Siemens color bars to have a corporate identity in my simulations. That's one template. Then, of course, I have my own material library that I import. I have stock geometry lying around. But I do not standardly automate my post-processing for high fidelity. When I was working on the race car prototypes, I had automated post-processing because I wanted to have always the same look with always the same limits of always the same quantities of different simulations to compare A to B. So I set that up and I automated that. So to export always the same looks, to export always the same quantities, so you can really put pressure coefficient of pressure next to coefficient of pressure of the other simulation, and then say, yeah, we have a difference at the front wing. And a lot of automation that you normally would, or programming that you would need to do in other software for cinematic post-processing, it's integrated in the user interface in my software in SimCenter Star CCM+, because it's targeted to make the life of engineers easier. Yeah, for example, we have something that we call screenplay, where you can record like with a cinema director's board in the software. So you modify the camera view automatically. And like 8 years ago or something, you had to write a macro for that. Yeah, change camera from here to there and do the steps in between and export frames in between. Yeah, nowadays it's like a video manager where you say, yeah, my camera starts here and my end perspective is here, and in between I do linear interpolation or spline or whatsoever. Yeah, that's, you have the automation already built into the code. So yeah, that's what I do there. But at some point things can get tricky, and then I fall back to macros, because the software written is for 99% of the engineers, and I still have to stick a little bit out of that with my post-processing. But I'm only extending the limits in that direction to make other engineers follow. Because if we improve the overall visual quality of what the average engineer gets out of SimCenter Star CCM+, then I multiply my personal effort.
That is true.
Yeah,
indeed. You're also known to have kind of a fable or like a weakness for Twitch. So you also stream on Twitch, which basically you're teaching people on Twitch to how to do CFD visualizations or how to set up a case.
Yes.
And Star CCM+. Talking about gaming, I think NVIDIA, the Blender environment, Unreal, the Unreal Engine is like setting the bar very high when it comes to how games are being visualized. What can CFD people / engineers learn from that? And how will the future look like when it comes to CFD post-processing? Like, where will we get to? I mean, you also had these VR glasses on, I think, in some of your posts, right? So where do we get to in terms of like how we present stuff to the C-level executives, for example?
Okay, that's a lot in one question. Let me start from Unreal, Blender, and maybe Omniverse, but Omniverse is a little bit different, NVIDIA Omniverse. So Unreal and Unity were several times discussed as, why can't we use that for visualization? The thing between CFD or simulation visualization and Unreal and Unity is how they treat data. For computational fluid dynamics, you have information in the volume. You have in the whole pipe, you have, for every cell in there, you have pressure, you have velocity, you have temperature, you name it, all the quantities. The first thing that Unreal and Unity and all these visualization tools do is crop that down. You don't have real 3-dimensional data. You have 2-dimensional objects in a three-dimensional space. So basically, let's say a sphere surface in a room. Yeah. Of course, there are things like smoke and fire representations or something like that, but you never really deal with three-dimensional native data. It's always like two-dimensional objects in a three-dimensional room. That's another power of information that you have to handle, actually. So Blender and Unreal, even though they do look better than what I do, I cannot compete with that. But yeah, it's not the real deal because you have cropped away all the data in the very, very first step. Blender is a little bit different because Blender has capabilities that you can import so many things from simulation, maybe via an export and a conversion and then an import. Yeah. And that's typically what people with free software do. Well, like you have, can I name competitors in that case? Yeah. Okay. You have like OpenFOAM. You do some post-processing in ParaView, and then you polish it in Blender. We at Siemens, we are obviously competitors to that. We say, okay, we're doing the whole pipeline in SimCenter Star CCM+. Because engineers might tweak their simulation, their visualization in SimCenter Star CCM+, in their native CFD environment. They will not go the way and install another software. Most likely, the hurdle is quite high. Another software to learn another software and then do additional stuff in there. Tough. I don't know. Yeah. So
pretty
we
much
have
summarizes it. Yeah.
Yeah. We basically have the whole pipeline in one environment. NVIDIA is and Unreal, NVIDIA and Omniverse. It's a different story because literally the whole thinking of NVIDIA is from the gaming background is I want to visualize something in real time. Yeah, a game, a software, doesn't matter. Then next priority is I want to make it as good looking as possible. And the third priority is then, add some physics so it feels natural. That's expanding. They are doing more physics than they ever used to be, and physical objects behave more like they should in real life in video games as well. That's due to NVIDIA's effort. But the thing for engineering software is basically the same road started from the other end. First of all, we need to solve the physics. That's like the bare minimum. That's our purpose. We need to be physically exact, whatever that means. The second thing is, what I do is make it shiny. And the third priority, which has never or has rarely been a priority, is make it the visualization as fast as possible. To be honest, if I produce a 10-second video for my CEO, for LinkedIn, or for whatever marketing material, nobody cares if it has rendered for an hour on my computer, for 10 seconds, or for a few days. When you're gaming, imagine the screen saying, please wait 2 minutes for the next frame.
Yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah. But it's the same route, but we're just going from different ends. We are on the same path. So it's like a convergent evolution.
How do you think that scientific visualization will evolve in the coming 5 to 10 years? I know it's very hard to predict this classical question of like, same with AI, right? Where's AI in 5 years? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
But do you have some kind of estimate, some kind of gut feeling where you think it will go? I mean, we talked about VR, right? There's augmented reality as well. Like, where do you think the CFD route will go when it comes to post-processing?
I have no crystal ball here. I only have hopes and dreams. So
Tell us.
My hope and dream would be that high quality visualization gets more and more democratized. So more people actually start polishing their CFD, start delivering high quality visuals, and the average quality of visualization delivered gets better and better. And I think AI can do something in that case, because everything I said about setting limits constant, setting limits to reasonable value, setting limits to not the highest and lowest value in the domain, that looks like an easy AI task to me. Yeah, just determine where the music really happens and crop your limits, your color bar limits to that. Yeah, sounds not too difficult for an AI. If maybe one day that enters as a preset into software, I don't know. Maybe at some point people will automatically see, yeah, RGB, like 100% red, 100% blue, 100% green is not ideal for my visualization. I will not use this. Yeah, that's fine. And visualization gets faster and faster every day. That's also something that really pushes us forward, because we just recently introduced a cinematic scene, a cinematic visualization as kind of new standard in our simulation tool. And if users really adapt to that, that's the next step for the results that we present from that get presented from our simulation. And I think democratization of high quality visualization, that's a thing for the next 5 years, and that's hopefully a road where we are going.
Yeah, democratization, but of course under the premise that people understand the physical quantities and results that come out of the CFD simulation.
Yeah, that's basically the baseline I would set below that.
Because I think some people have maybe bastardized the term democratization so that everyone can do whatever they want, especially when it comes to design and simulation. Where in fact the simulation experts will probably say, I've studied this thing for 20 years. I don't think a designer will be able to do what I can do, which I kind of get. But also from the other side, I'm completely with you, Stephan, that I think it's only a benefit for the engineers if people who are not engineers, maybe the designers, can work on post-processing just for intermediate results and interpretation.
Yeah.
Last question before we wrap it up, Stephan. Super interesting so far. Really like the discussion, or like at least it was partially a monologue from your end, but
Sorry.
I think it was actually my fault. How do you actually get started with post-processing? Let's say you want to get into it. You don't want to learn the university way, because I feel in university, it's like, do this, then click this, without really an instruction of why you do things, right? I mean, when you use Abacus in university, they say, click this NLGeom button, and nobody explains really what it does behind the scenes. So how would you, if you go back to university, Stephan, how would you approach CFD post-processing from first principles?
Well, get some ground rules. I have visualization tutorials on YouTube, but there is so much content about that out there. But the most important thing is, from my standpoint, for upcoming minds and engineers, is motivation. Yeah. And with visualization, that comes if you have a picture in mind that you want to reach in the end with your results. Like, I'm dealing with that rocket. I want to make it look as if it was really flying in space and the exhaust fumes are really looking like the thing in real. That's the picture you have in your mind for cinematic post-processing. And that picture motivates you trying to achieve things in post-processing. And what happens on the way is basically we learn how to get there, because we want to reach our goal, and we will struggle, we will fail, yes, of course, but in the end, we will improve in that case. And you don't need to study which button to click on beforehand. If you're motivated, you will struggle at some point, and then you will find out which button it is in the end.
I think ultimately, going back to the beginning of the conversation, Stephan, is that you kind of got inspired by me starting to post about CFD. What I really like, and I think what really stands out, because you're one of these guys that actually consistently or quite consistently post about CFD visualizations. So you're also self-motivated. So you have an intrinsic but also extrinsic motivation to some extent to post on your platform about CFD. So you're a teacher to some extent, an educator, but also like a CFD influencer, if you want to call it like that. But I think what really stands out nowadays, if you want to stand out, let's say everybody does the same level of quality in terms of like visualizations. I think it's kind of the self-motivation and willing to push beyond like pain and like failure, what you just said, to really stand out. And I think that makes it the 1% of the 1%, so to speak. So if someone wants to become a CFD post-processing engineer, so to speak, and I think there's even jobs out there that are called post-processing engineer. Like there's actually dedicated jobs out there that's starting to emerge to actually make things look beautiful. I think that's really what you do, Stephan, like really pushing the boundaries, like doing things out of self-motivation.
Yeah.
Because you're chasing for a higher goal, whatever that might look like. I've actually one question to you, Stephan, like a more personal one. Do you daydream about your visualizations?
Daydream.
Like, do you think about like when you get stuck somewhere, or like you think about the post-processing visualization that you're really proud about? Do you daydream about them? Because I think a common denominator for all the people who are like really deeply involved, emotionally involved in their work, is that they daydream about the stuff that they're working on. And I'm wondering if you do the same about CFD.
So actually, when something fails, when a critical simulation is running, I get nightmares, but that's not the same thing. Daydreams. I have a blooming fantasy when it comes to that. I'm not sure if experts would really call that daydreaming, but when I really understand the subject, the movie script develops in my head partly. Not necessarily like the whole animation, but at least parts of that. And that's something that can happen while I walk my dog. And that can also happen when I'm doing a podcast on the other ear. And that is also something that can happen while I'm really, really working on this stuff. Sometimes it's like thoughts strike me. You might have noticed in the whole podcast that my brain is not really right, like forward structured in one line. And that's also like how my mind works. And so I could be doing A, and some out of nowhere I get crazy thoughts about visualization B. Yeah, what I could do. And my issue is not like getting the ideas, getting the daydreams, if you want to call them like that. My issue is more like pursuing them, realizing them.
Super interesting. One last sentence from your side, Stephan. One motivating sentence to the CFD audience out there.
All CFD simulations are beautiful if you just invest like 2 minutes into them. Show them we are interested. We love it.
That's a good one. I love it. By the way, I just thought I lost you for a second because you just literally froze, but okay, that's a very, very good last sentence.
Sometimes I have to think.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And we'll put all the resources from you, Stephan, because you have a huge social footprint when it comes to CFD post-processing. So we'll put some of the series on post-processing, etc., in the description so people can check them out.
Perfect.
So after 3 years, we made it happen, Stephan. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Yusuf. That was awesome.